In a small concrete house in San Pablo, Laguna, a biscuit tin sat on the middle shelf of a cabinet beside an old woman's bed. Inside the tin were 28 years of secrets she had never told her family. When her granddaughter flew home from New York to clear out the house, she opened that tin, and what she found inside would undo every assumption she had ever made about love, sacrifice, and the grandmother she barely knew. Her name was Isabel Reyes Montgomery. She was 34 years old and successful by every measure Manhattan respected. Investment banker. Corner office. Apartment with a view of the Hudson. She sent money home. She called on birthdays. She told herself that was enough. She had believed it for 11 years. She was about to discover she had been wrong about everything. The call came during a board meeting. A number she did not recognize. Her Lola's neighbor of 40 years, Mang Celso. His voice was old and unhurried. He said 6 words that would collapse her entire week. "Your Lola is gone, Hija. Please come home." Isabel did not cry. She did not feel anything yet. She simply walked back into the conference room and finished the meeting. If this story is already hitting somewhere deep, share it with someone who has a Lola they have not called in too long. Subscribe to Pinoy Spirit Chronicles for more stories like this. And drop Pinoy Red Heart in the comments. Now let us go back to Isabel standing in that doorway. She booked the next flight to Manila. 1 week. Fly in. Handle the paperwork. Clear the house. Fly out. That was the plan. Isabel had learned efficiency from her mother, and her mother had learned it from necessity. Nobody in their family lingered. Lingering cost things you could not afford to lose. She would find that out soon enough. Mang Celso met her outside the house with a key and a glass of cold water. He was the kind of old man who communicated mostly through doing rather than saying. He had already swept the front step. He had placed fresh sampaguita near the door. He told Isabel that her Lola had spoken of her every single day. Isabel thanked him and assumed this was simply what neighbors said. It was not. The house was small and very clean. It smelled like old wood and something floral she could not immediately identify. Everything was in its place in the way that only deeply organized people or deeply lonely people arrange their belongings. Isabel stood in the middle of the main room and realized she did not know which chair her Lola sat in. She did not know which window she looked out of in the morning. She started clearing methodically because that was the only way she knew how to do things. She was fine through the kitchen, fine through the living room, fine through the small bathroom with its single bar of soap worn down to almost nothing. She was completely fine until she opened the cabinet beside Lola's bed and saw the biscuit tin sitting on the middle shelf like it had been waiting specifically for her. Inside the tin were letters, bundled in groups and tied with faded ribbon that had once been yellow. Every letter her mother Linda had sent home from America over 28 years. Every single one kept and organized by date in her grandmother's careful handwriting on small paper labels. Isabel picked up the first bundle. The postmark said 1996. She was 6 years old in 1996. She sat down on the edge of Lola's mattress and began to read. She read for 6 hours without moving. Outside, the afternoon turned to evening and the barangay sound shifted from children playing to tricycles returning home to the smell of dinner being cooked in neighboring kitchens. Isabel did not notice any of it. She was reading her mother's life, the early years in America, the exhaustion, the homesickness, the small victories, all of it sent home in letters to a woman who had kept every word. Then she found the other letters, tucked at the bottom of the tin beneath the received ones. A separate bundle. Same handwriting on the outside. But these envelopes had never been opened, because they had never been sent. Her Lola had written back to Linda for 28 years and had kept every reply unsent. Isabel's hands were not steady when she opened the first one. Lola's unsent letters were not dramatic. They were not full of accusation or longing written in capital letters. They were quiet in the way her grandmother had always been quiet. She wrote about the garden, about the neighbor's new grandchild, about the price of rice going up again. And then, woven into the ordinary details like something she was trying to hide even from herself, the loneliness. Small sentences, almost casual. I cooked for 2 again tonight by accident. The house is very quiet on Sundays. She had not sent them because she did not want Linda to worry. She had written them because she needed somewhere to put the feeling. And she had kept them because throwing them away would have felt like throwing away the conversation she wished she could have had. Isabel sat in the dark of her grandmother's bedroom holding a letter that was never meant for her eyes and understood for the first time what her Lola had carried alone for 11 years. The Bible was on the nightstand. Isabel almost did not open it. She was not sure she could absorb anything else that evening, but she picked it up because it had belonged to her grandmother and she wanted to hold something her grandmother had held every day. The passbook fell out from between the pages of the Psalms and landed on the floor. Isabel picked it up without knowing what it was. Then she opened it and stopped breathing. 50 pesos a week for 31 years. The deposits were so small and so consistent they looked like a heartbeat on the page. Every week without exception. Floods, typhoons. The years when rice was expensive. The years when Lola's health costs were higher. 50 pesos every single week into a rural bank account that Isabel had never known existed. The final withdrawal date was the August before Isabel started university in America. The amount transferred matched her first-year tuition exactly. Isabel called her mother. It was 2 a.m. in New York, but Linda answered on the second ring in the way mothers answer calls from children who are somewhere far away and grieving. Isabel read out the deposit amounts and the dates and the final withdrawal. The line was silent for so long that Isabel checked twice to see if the call had dropped. Then Linda said very quietly, "I told you I had saved it myself." Linda explained. She had not wanted Isabel to feel indebted to someone she barely knew. She had thought she was protecting her daughter from unnecessary guilt. Isabel listened to all of this standing in her grandmother's kitchen in the dark. Then she said, "She was my Lola. She should not have been someone I barely knew. That was not Lola's fault." Linda did not respond. They stayed on the phone in silence for a very long time, and the silence said everything the words could not. Isabel found the diary the next morning. It was tucked beneath the mattress in a green notebook with no label and no decoration. She almost missed it. She was stripping the bedsheets when her hand touched the cover. She pulled it out and sat on the bare mattress and opened it to the first page. The date at the top was the day Isabel was born. 34 years ago, her grandmother had started writing the day she arrived in the world and had not stopped. The entries were short, never more than 3 sentences, but they spanned Isabel's entire life. The day Linda called from the hospital. Isabel's first birthday celebrated from a distance. The photograph of the school play Linda had mailed home. Every graduation. Every milestone Linda had reported in her letters. Lola had recorded all of it in 3 careful sentences on the day she received the news, as if she needed to make it permanent. Isabel, read the diary the way you read something that is rearranging you from the inside. Slowly, stopping often, going back to reread sentences that landed somewhere she had not expected. Her grandmother had attended every moment of her life from 6,000 miles away in a small house in Laguna with a pen and a green notebook and a faith that the distance was temporary even when everything suggested it was not. Then she found the phrase. It appeared first in an entry from when Isabel was 7 years old and appeared again and again throughout the diary across 30 years of entries. 3 words in Tagalog written in the same careful handwriting every time. Anaking puso ko. Isabel did not speak Tagalog fluently. She typed it into her phone with hands that were not entirely steady. The translation came back, "Child of my heart." She walked outside into the garden. She needed air. The sampaguita was blooming along the fence the way it apparently bloomed every year, whether anyone was there to notice it or not. Isabel stood in the middle of her grandmother's garden in San Pablo, Laguna at 7 in the morning and pressed both hands against her face and let 34 years of distance and busyness and good intentions catch up with her all at once. Mang Celso appeared at the fence with 2 cups of coffee. He did not ask if she was all right. He simply handed her a cup and stood beside her looking at the sampaguita. After a while he told her that her Lola had planted those flowers the year Linda left for America. He said she tended them every morning for 30 years. He said he thought she did it so there would always be something beautiful waiting when Linda came home. Isabel stayed for 3 weeks. She had told her assistant 1 week, then 2, then 3. Nobody from her Manhattan life fully understood what was keeping her. She did not try to explain it. She spent her days talking to neighbors who had known her Lola for decades. She learned things about her grandmother that her own mother did not know. The Saturday morning reading lessons for barangay children. The daily 5 o'clock walk to church. The way she greeted everyone by name. Mang Celso told her one evening that her Lola had never once complained about being alone. He said this not to make Isabel feel guilty but because he thought she deserved to know the full truth of who the woman was. He said Lola had told him once that loneliness was just love with nowhere to go yet. That it was not an ending. It was awaiting. Isabel wrote that down in her own notebook that night and stared at it for a long time. She did not sell the house. She had arrived intending to clear it efficiently and list it with an agent and be back in Manhattan within 7 days. Instead, she called a local contractor and had it repainted and repaired. She kept everything inside exactly where it was. The biscuit tin went back on the middle shelf of the cabinet beside the bed. The green diary went on the nightstand where the Bible had been. The unsent letters stayed in their bundle tied with the faded ribbon. She established a small foundation before she left, not because she had planned to, but because Mang Celso had mentioned one afternoon over coffee that Lola had been running informal reading lessons for barangay children in her living room for 20 years. Isabel had not known. Nobody had known outside the barangay. The Caring Reyes Literacy Foundation was named for her grandmother and funded exactly what Lola had already been doing quietly for decades. Isabel was not starting something new. She was simply refusing to let something beautiful end. Isabel brought her mother back to San Pablo 3 months later. It was Linda's first time in the house in 11 years. She stood in the doorway for a long time before she could walk inside. Isabel did not rush her. She stood beside her mother in the entrance of the small house in Laguna and waited. Some arrivals need a moment before they can become real. Linda walked to the cabinet beside the bed and opened it and placed both hands on the biscuit tin without speaking. Linda sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours reading the unsent letters. Isabel made coffee and sat across from her and said nothing. Occasionally Linda would stop reading and look up at nothing in particular and then look back down. The afternoon light moved across the table the way afternoon light moves in provincial houses, slowly, generously, as if it has nowhere more important to be. At the end, Linda folded the last letter back into its envelope and held it against her chest. She said, "I thought I was doing the right thing. Leaving. Sending money. Building something better for you. I thought that was what love looked like." Isabel said, "It was what love looked like. And so was this." She gestured at the cabinet. At the tin. At the house that still smelled like sampaguita and old wood, in the specific presence of a woman who had never stopped loving them both from the only place she had. Isabel visits San Pablo every 3 months now. She does not stay in a hotel. She stays in her Lola's house on the thin mattress with the green diary on the nightstand. She has learned which chair Lola sat in. She has learned which window she looked out of in the morning. She knows where the garden tools are kept and which plants need water every day and which ones only need it twice a week. She learned all of this too late, and she does it anyway because that is what you do. The Saturday reading program runs every week in Lola's living room now. Different children than the ones Lola taught. Same wooden chairs. Same morning light through the same window. A young teacher from the barangay runs it and does not need Isabel to be there. Isabel comes anyway sometimes and sits in the back and watches. She does not participate. She just watches the children learning to read in her grandmother's living room and lets that be enough. She called her grandmother 4 times in the last year of her life. 4 times in 12 months. She knows this because she checked. She had been busy. She had always been busy. She carries that number with her the way you carry something that cannot be put down and cannot be made lighter. 4 times. She does not say this to punish herself. She says it so she does not forget what busy costs. The green diary is the last thing Isabel reads every time she visits. Not from the beginning. She just opens it to a random page and reads 3 sentences from whatever day her grandmother had lived on that page. A Tuesday in 1998. A Sunday in 2007. A Thursday 2 months before she died. Always 3 sentences. Always her grandmother's handwriting. Always somewhere in those 3 sentences the ordinary extraordinary evidence of a woman who loved her family with everything she had from the only place she was. This story is inspired by every Filipino grandmother who kept our letters, saved their 50 pesos, and wrote our names in small notebooks we never knew existed. They loved us across oceans and decades and time zones without asking us to notice. They planted sampaguita so there would be something beautiful waiting when we came home. We were busy. We were far away. We meant to visit more. They knew all of this and loved us anyway. That is the kind of love that does not have a word in any language except the one they showed us. And we are still learning how to be worthy of it. Philippines Red Heart.